Hi guys, Togo here with a new video, and this video is going to be maybe a boring one, but I'm going to make this because I feel like a lot of people are confusing a lot of stuff, but it will be talking about meta and actually what is meta in World of Warcraft PvP and why people should kind of stop complaining about balancing and talking about like, oh, the game is so bad because of balancing or whatever, because I feel like it is always and was always a theme of discussion, I would say. Um, Let me explain. If someone complains about balancing right now, um, and they're talking about the good old days, now the good old days were also talking about balancing problems. In even in classic vanilla, where people were like crying out loud about paladins, and then warlocks, and then hunters, and then mages, and then warriors, and same for TBC, same for Wrath of the Lich King, same for Cataclysm, same for Mist of Pandaria, Walls of Draenor, Legion, BFA, even Shadowlands, and Dragonflight. So, what's actually the point of this video? To actually make you an eye-opening statement that balancing will never be balanced. Metas will always occur. You will always have specs on top and specs at the bottom, and the same for like the averages, like how many times rogues are on top, how many times mages are on top, how many times warlocks are on top, how many times warriors are on top. But I'm going to talk about it and show you guys that you should not really worry too much about balancing, because as long as the balancing is often and occurs on a rapid state, that people actually are short on the leash whenever something is broken, it can be very enjoyable. Let me explain again. You would not want a game that is purely balanced and only balanced and will never change afterwards. Because no game is like this. No PvP setting is like this. If everything is discovered, it becomes boring. Let's see Wrath of the Lich King Classic. People were like excited for PvP, but at the end of the day, you only see Warrior, Elemental Shaman, Holy Paladin. And then the rare rogue mage or the rare elemental shaman with a warlock. But the meta has been settled. You will never really see a good resto shaman healer because you are lacking tools to heal correctly compared to a disc priest or even a holy paladin. Even resto druids are, regarding Wrath of the Lich King metas, not really the best healers at current patch. It was the best at one point and then it got nerfed, and now we are like in a state where nothing changes because in classic nothing changes, and then you have like a boring meta. And it would be the same for a Cataclysm. Whenever Cataclysm will come out and they are deciding to not have progressive patches or no patch changes for PvP or whatever, you will have the same old meta, and after one patch everyone is going to be gone because everything has been seen. And this is actually why I like retail more right now, from a long time, because I know that I need the changes to keep my interest alive, and I want sometimes to have broken patches. I want to have sometimes some more fairer patches. I want to have like a not so status quo feel. I want to have changes every single time. And I'm going to talk about meta. So let's talk about the meta right now. And I think I already discussed multiple times. Right now, for me, it feels like it is a custom meta with the DH and DK being on top, like melee wise, but then we have windwalkers being way better right now, which, since windwalkers are something, it becomes that Holy Paladins becomes something as well, because again, what is the worst enemy of a Windwalker? Well, Denounce, which is a PvP talent from Holy Paladins, but also Double Bop, freedoms, and just in general, you have way more tools to stop a Windwalker as a Holy Paladin than, let's say, a Resto Druid. Of course, Resto Druid can just root Windwalkers, but then again, that's also why Resto Druids are very strong, and Disc Priest a bit less. So, the meta right now is settled, in my opinion. They will have changes very soon, I guess, after New Year. Again, I wish you guys a new year, a good year in 2024, with all the wishes being true. But I think that people complaining about this current meta don't really know that metas are going to always change. And we have this meta, and we have a anti-meta now. The anti-meta is Holy Paladin. the Holy Paladin resurgence is not from a patch note that made the Holy Paladin broken. They are the same than previous patch. They got a buff on the mana changes and then a nerf on the mana changes, which effectively is still a buff, I think, but it's still like very minor. And the reason why Holy Paladins is now how high they are right now is because of the occurrence of windwalkers. We have also rogues, which often and not are countered by Holy Paladins in general. You have also the Arms Warrior, which is also a very good pairing with Holy Paladin, but also a very good spec that is getting countered by Holy Paladins. And the only things that are actually currently not that great for Holy Paladins are Unholy Decays, but even Unholy Decays, you have a PvP talent that whenever you're doing a flash heal, you dispel diseases. What do you know? The meta got an anti-meta now. And then there will be a new meta forming because of that. People are going to not sleep on Holy Paladin, and the more Holy Paladins you will see, the less Windwalkers and the less Unholy Decays you will see, the more casters you will see, because casters are actually very strong versus Holy Paladins. But again, Blessing of Protection will not help you with a Chaos Bolt flying on your face. So you see that the meta and the anti-meta will then form a new meta, and that new meta is going to then overtake all the metas, and then you will have another anti-meta, and then you will have a patch note, a balancing changes, which is going to overthrow everything depending on the changes on that patch note. But you see that everything should be considered that it is normal to have a meta, and normal to have a flavor of the month, normal to have a S tier, and normal to have a D tier. Augmentation Evoker is D tier. Everyone knows that. Frost Decay, regardless of what I feel right now, it is still considered as a D tier, maybe max C tier spec. And then you have Fury Warriors, to be honest, that are also very low on the tier lists, because it is just not really that good, but also it is not really having a USP, unique selling point, to have Fury Warriors being better than right now. So you see that right now, the meta has been settled. We have a meta, we have a S tier, we have a D tier, and people are complaining because that currently we have a S tier and a D tier. They want everything to be B or A tier, which I'm going to be honest, will never happen. If people are like living in a utopia of having a balanced PvP game, I think they should look at other games and actually see a bit further than their noses on those states. There is no PvP game that is actually very balanced. Even CSGO has a meta on weapons. You don't want to run around with a UMP. I don't know how it's called now on CS2. But you don't want to run around with a P90, for example. You don't want to run around with the AUG, except on certain maps. You want to run around with either an M4 or AK, depending on what your size are. Sometimes you want to have an MP5 if you really are like close with money, you want to anti-echo, or often or not you do echo until you have an M4 or an AK, and then you have the occasional op, so occasional sniper on your team, which again the meta is not having 5 snipers on your team. You want to only have 1, because then you're going to waste too much gold or like money, and if they're going to kill you and they get a sniper, it's effectively just a big loss for you. So that's also a meta on CS2. Again, I'm not proficient on CS2, but I think a lot of people can actually comment below. It will be the same for Valorant. You have some heroes that are like agents that are meta, and then some agents are not meta. It is just how it is. You will always have a spec that is going to overpower another. If, again, I'm going to say, Arms Warrior is immensely strong, and they are like disgustingly OP, you will see some melees that are going to crawl back to where they were. For example, an assassination rogue is going to have a bad time versus an Arms Warrior if Arms Warrior is like the oppressive S tier that it is. Or if Destruction Warlock is disgustingly OP, well, you will see some specs like, for example, Retribution Paladin have immensely difficulties, for example. Or even like Warrior specs, or even just in general, you have classes that are really not good versus classes. For example, Shadow Priest, in my opinion, is not good versus classes, because you will have to use your CC on the healer, which immediately you will see the difference with a Destruction Warlock that is untouched with CC and Destruction Warlock touched by CC. For example, Elemental Shaman. If Destruction Warlock is very good, generally Elemental Shaman can also be very good. Or if Affliction Warlock is disgustingly OP, well, it means that the meta is kind of dampening, unfortunately, and it will get nerfed eventually. You have specs that are way faster nerfed than others because they affect the whole game. For example, if, let's say, Retribution Paladin gets a 10.0.7 patch again, they will make sure to nerf it back to the ground because people didn't like to play Retribution Paladin every single game with the utility and the defensives that they have. So you see that they will always have a meta, and every single game has a meta. So for the love of God, again, you should try to avoid complaining about balancing and wanting a balanced game, because that will never happen. Blizzard doesn't actually want to have that, and I think you as a player should not want that. Trust me, a balanced game is only happening if every spec is the same. So it means that Arms Warrior has the same tools as the Rogue, that Destruction Warlock has the same tools as a Rogue, the Destruction Warlock has the same tools as a Frost Mage, the Frost Mage has the same tools as an Affliction Warlock. You don't want that. You don't want uniformism to the point where every single spec will feel the same, except Chaos Bolt will be green and a Frost Bolt will be blue. You don't want that. So you should also not advocate for that. You want to have kind of a complementary game. Again, it's like balance around 3v3. So you want to have Destruction Warlock if they are strong. What is complementary with a Destruction Warlock? Another caster, for example, Frost Mage. You can even say Fire Mage, even Arcane Mage, doesn't really matter. Or you can play Elemental Shaman, or even Boomy, although Boomy, Destruction Warlock, you have some similarities, but you have a bigger DR, which is Fear DR. You have way more complementaries if you know how to make them, but it makes them not unique. It makes them unique, excuse me. So Destruction Warlock by themselves, they're going to be unique in the game. So obviously, if they're strong, it will pop up on your screen how strong they are. The same for Boomies, the same for BM Hunters, the same for DH, the same for DK. All of this is really going to show you the state of PvP. But is it a bad thing to have specs being stronger than others? Is it a bad thing to have balancing ever changing, and that some patches you will have a flavor of the month and the other patch will be a C-tier spec, for example? I know that's very frustrating, but in a game, again, how they improved alting, and if you want to play a spec that is either flavor of the month or S tier at all times, well, you could always alt and play another spec. Or if you want to stick by it and just play it until they get buffed, you will just get a immensely good feel about your spec once you get a buff on that. Now, it's not to take away that some specs are like forgotten and that are in a miserable state because of how they are designed and not really how they are balanced, because I think balancing is again something that is actually very easy to just numbers game, right? But if a spec is just a number nightmare, for example, Frost Mage, I'm currently playing Frost Mage, guys, so again, you might see some content about it, but Frost Decay, did I say Frost Mage? I would say Frost Decay, excuse me. So Frost Decay, the problem is with that spec is it is a number nightmare. It's either the numbers are correct and you will just do insane damage and it doesn't really matter how squishy you are or how easy it is to stop you. If you get a buff on it, it will make it broken. If you get it like how it is right now or you nerf it, it will just be miserable to play. It's the same for Fury Warrior, to be honest. If Fury Warrior gets a buff like on damage and it becomes very, very strong, like the buff compared to how they are currently, they could become like directly S tier. But if they keep it like this or they nerf it, it will become faster C tier or D tier because you don't have anything else than just damage. And Frost Decay has CC, so that's not only the problem. CC is there, but they just die or it's very, very easy to stop them while you know how a Frost Decay operates. The problem is design. If they don't design the specs correctly, then you will have some problems. And that's what I want to show. Frost Decay, right now, they don't get a lot of buffs, and whenever they do, it's very, very insignificant. It doesn't really help them. And even if it gets helped, the problem is the gameplay is not really there. It should be way more engaging and more less about us like a sub rogue, but more like a frost decay, which should be a juggernaut marching towards the enemies, trying to grip everyone, try to do insane damage at all times, as long as you can connect. Not like you want to play hide and seek until you have CDs. And right now, you don't really play hide and seek anymore because you have too many specs that can actually catch up way easier. And hide and seek just makes you line the healer most of the time. But I think if they redesign a lot of specs that should be redesigned, I think a lot of those complaints about balancing would be a bit more dampened, I would say. I'm gonna say that Affliction Warlock, gameplay wise, is not really fun. I do play it sometimes. I enjoy it, but I enjoy it because it's a Warlock spec. I just like Warlock, the class itself. But I think if I'm looking at Mist of Pandaria, Cataclysm, Walls of Draenor, I prefer those iterations of Affliction Warlock compared to what we have right now. Frost Decay, I love the DK specs, I love the class DK, but am I going to play it purely because I enjoy to play the Frost Decay spec without my history behind DK? Probably not. I think it's just not really engaging. But again, if I'm thinking about Frost Decay, I'm thinking about Wrath, Cataclysm, Mist of Pandaria, Walls of Draenor. Same for Fury Warriors, to be honest. Why am I actually playing Fury Warrior? Mostly because I love Warrior, but it's not engaging. I think it just is a rampaging berserker. Let's be honest, it is doing that, but there is something missing on how you press buttons. It feels like either you're playing around your rampages or you're playing around your bloodthirst, bloodbath, forset, which is boring to do so. So I think again there's a lot of stuff that they need to do. They need to redesign probably the feral druids as well. Enhancement Shaman, Fury Warrior, Frost Decay. I think survival is fine, but I think they should have more options on their specs. I think those 3 rogue specs are actually showing that you can actually rework the specs without making them feel other like another spec pretty much. They can still feel like sub rogues, assassination rogues, and outlaw rogues. And that's actually a good thing. I think windwalkers, they need to redesign how they deal damage, but I think with the forset right now, it does alright with blackout kicks. But at one point, whenever the forset is going to be gone, what are you going to do about Windwalker? That's the main question. Retribution Paladin has a good rework. Arms Warrior, I think it's quite fine with how they do. I think they just need a bit to change their philosophy behind bleeds. I think playing around bleeds is not really the fantasy I would think about Arms Warrior, to be honest. Unholy DK, I think they need to rework a few things. I think whenever we are in War Within, the gameplay will not work. That's what I'm thinking right now. And DH is I don't have enough like data for it, but I think I can talk safely about Shadow Priest. I think Shadow Priest should be redesigned again for PvP, like completely. I think Fire Mages, they should redesign glass cannon. They just need to find a way to not get a fire mage that is completely broken, but also not a fire mage that is completely like glass cannon, literally, like the PvP talent, to do significant damage. So they need to think something about it. Affliction will look the same. Augmentation and Devastation, I think, needs a rework. Even though Devastation right now does good damage and it is doing fine, they need to find a way to make it more engaging, like damage-wise. I think right now you have some damage profiles that are very questionable in my opinion, but I think that you have all those specs that actually needs a PvP redesign. But for that, you kind of have to recreate a new game, because in PvE maybe augmentation feels alright, maybe in PvE fire mage feels alright, but that's their job to make it also feel alright in PvP without making it feel not a fire mage. And I think once they have like worked on it and they actually like have good designs on those specs, it will be easier to buff or nerf some specs. But right now I think they have like some paralysis analysis kind of feel, analysis paralysis kind of feel with Frost Decays, for example, or Fury Warriors or Fire Mages or Affliction Warlocks, because they cannot buff it because they know how broken it can be once it buffed. It is not a number it's a number problem, but it's not a number problem, it's a design problem. It's either it's going to be OP or either it's going to be garbage. There's no like in between. It's very hard to have like that feel with like Frost Decay. You will never really see Frost Decay like middle of the road. It's either top of the road or bottom of the road. and the same for affliction warlock, to be honest. Right now it feels like it's middle of the road, but it's because basically all the specs are above affliction warlock, and you have like some clear specs that are beyond and below affliction warlock. But if you have like those D tier specs and C tier specs buffed, I think affliction warlock will just go lower and lower every single time whenever there is a buff towards those specs. But again, I could talk hours about it. Please let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. I didn't really talk too much about heals, but I think it's very simple. Preservation is a number problem, but also like a CD problem with current landscape. But also Holy Priest. I think I've been playing a bit of Holy Priest, testing some healers, and I feel like the main thing I can say about Holy Priest is they have a backwards way of healing, where they want to have people to be low HP to heal maximum without over healing, but also they don't have damage reduction. So it means that all the damage that you get as a DPS, whatever you have a Holy Priest, is always going to be like 100% you're going to get, like even without a healer. So there is no damage reduction beyond it. Like for example, this priest, they have like pain suppression, they have dome, they have ways to attenuate some damage of the enemy, but with a Holy Priest you don't have that. So again, it's a redesign that actually is needed for PvP. But I mean, that's pretty clear with if you're playing Holy Priest and you play a Disc Priest afterwards, you would feel like difference. But anyways, let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Again, it's not really the most exciting video I wanted to make, but I think I wanted to make it since now it's a pretty calm period. I wanted to address metas, I wanted to address balancing, I wanted to address like redesigns, I wanted to address the fact that there is no PvP game being balanced. Even fighting games have like balancing issues, but I would not call them issues. I would call them like they have balancing, and they have a meta, and you have an anti-meta, and you have like a clear S tiers, clear CD tiers, and the job of the developers are to give some shine to every single class. But there will never be a time where everyone is going to be A tier, because again, there is rock, paper, scissors kind of gameplay. If a spec or a comp is immensely strong, another comp is going to be immensely weak versus that, and it will just depend on popularity to see if one spec is going to be, or comp is going to be meta, and one comp is not going to be meta. So I think if people can understand that, then we can move forward with that conversation, and we could go deeper into the things that are actually really hitting PvP. But anyways, I made a video about solo queue RPG, so if you want to check that out, you can always check that out. If you want to check what target is the best target to target in solo shuffle, there is a lot of targets. You can also watch one of these videos, and we will catch each other probably very soon in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.